Hi guys, good afternoon and welcome back once again to the EdWord. I'm your host Eddie, and in today's video I'll be discussing what I thought of the second and the latest and very interesting episode of the new anthology show Tales of the Walking Dead. The second and newest episode dropped today on AMC Plus and then will drop next week on AMC. On AMC tonight is the series premiere, the first episode of this show, but for those of us who are AMC Plus holders like this guy, we get to enjoy the newest episodes a week early, which is why I got to watch the second episode earlier today. Got a lot to say about it because I did like it, but I also had a few problems with it. But before I get into all of that, of course, as usual with most of my episode reviews, this is a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen the latest episode of Tales and you want to, do not keep watching or listening to this episode, as I will be discussing and going into spoilers. That being said, you have been warned. Let's dive right back into it. First and foremost, this episode was a bit confusing because it didn't really resolve or answer the question if this actually happened in the world of The Walking Dead, or if these two, or if parts of it were true and the rest of it was like compartmentalized and they made it up in their own heads to process and cope with the trauma that they witnessed, because I feel like that's what most likely would happen. Like, the girl Gina says to her boss Blair that they were both at the gas market, and during a little standoff, they both witnessed the undead husband attack his still living wife in the car, or outside of the car. And it traumatized them both so bad that because they had spent so much time together, they had shared mutual post-traumatic stress dawn upon them. And they create this fantasy where in every other scenario, the tanker truck always blows up and they always die, until they decide to stop it, work together, escape together in the tanker truck, where nobody dies. Well, almost nobody dies except the poor kid, of course, the son of the DHS agent. So in that regards, it was a little confusing, but it was entertaining all the same. I think I definitely enjoyed the second half of this episode more than I enjoyed the first half, because the first half was frankly a little slow, a little confused. No, not really a little slow. It was more confusing and convoluted. But then in the second half of this episode, it improved quite a bit when they decided to work together, and it got a bit more exciting with more walkers and more intriguing character development. Like, Parker Posey's character had a nice little redemption arc towards the end of this episode, where she stopped acting like such a controlling boss freak bitch or whatever. And then Gina also kind of lightened up too, without being so rigid all the time as well. And they actually learned to get along with each other. That was a nice way to end both their character arcs. But there's something about the first half of this episode that was so convoluted that it made it a little difficult to watch or stay engaged. But as soon as we got into the second half, I was like, okay, now it's getting better. Now I'm starting to really get hooked. Now I'm more invested in these characters. After kind of a rocky start in the first half, the second half was much, much better and much more exciting. I love seeing 2010 Atlanta again, and the walkers looked great. And, the characters were fairly interesting for the most part. And it certainly explained why in the promo for this show, we saw Parker Posey's character expose her neck to a walker coming up behind her saying, just get it over with. And I'm like, wow, they're showing a character death in a promo for this show? That seems odd. They never do that for this series. But then, I guess since it technically didn't really happen, they can show that, right? So again, it's very unclear as to what was actually real and what wasn't in this particular episode, but that was probably the point, since this is meant to be a more interesting and different take on the franchise with different styles of storytelling. But that's okay, because a lot of people over the years have complained that the main mothership show, The Walking Dead, never changes or does anything different. And of course, when it does do things different, people hate it and bitch about it, even though the show is doing exactly what they wanted, which is changing things up, changing them, whether it's for the good or for the worse, or for better or for worse, they change. And of course, when it does change, people still complain about it, because that's how this fan base be. It's not just this fan base either. It's a lot of fan bases that are as inconsistent as the franchise franchises they claim to love and cherish. That's just a fact. Fight me. No, please don't. But getting back to the point of the show, the second half was definitely far more enjoyable than the first half. And again, it was very unclear as to what was actually happening and what wasn't. But in the end, by the end of this episode, I enjoyed it for the most part. And it certainly did not go the way I thought it would. But that's okay because it kind of kept me intrigued throughout the whole thing. Even though the first half wasn't nearly as engaging, I was like, I'm curious to see how this is going to end. And that's exactly what happened. I stuck with it towards the end. So I hope you guys liked this episode slightly more than I did, if not just as much. What did you think of this episode? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings on it. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome rest of your day. Tales of the Walking Dead drop new episodes every Sunday on AMC Plus and AMC, depending on which one you have. It's a pretty interesting show so far. The first episode was great. Second episode is okay, and I'm curious to see what the rest has in store for us. So have an awesome rest of your day if I don't see you. And of course, until next time, may the Force be with you.